He screamed at me over roast beef. I tore up his future in silence. The check was still warm from my hand when I ripped it in half. Not because I stopped loving him, but because he forgot I ever did. He didn't just scream it. He cracked the bones of everything I'd built. One sentence. And 19 years of love collapsed into the hallway tile like spilled water no one bothered to mop up. I didn't yell back. I didn't cry. I just turned off the oven. It was Sunday, roast night. The house used to smell like rosemary and garlic. That day it smelled like burnt edges and something that shouldn't have been said. The table was already set. 2 plates, a folded napkin, under the old silverware. Kyle always sat in the same seat, elbow on the table, phone beside his fork. But today, when I asked about the tuition paperwork, he didn't sit. He didn't breathe. He exploded. Get out of my life. I don't need your money or your approval. He said it like I was some neighbor who overstayed her welcome, not the woman who raised him. When his mother died in a car wreck and his father disappeared into a second marriage in another state, I stood still, carving the tension in the air with the knife I was holding. The roast was done. We were not. He stormed out. The screen door banged hard behind him. My wrist flinched. The knife dropped. I stared at the check lying on the counter. $28,000. 4 digits for every year I raised him, tied to an account I opened after losing my daughter, his mother, because I promised her at her funeral, he'll go to college. He won't drift. Turns out, he didn't drift. He ran from me. I sat down, not at the table but on the floor, right where the knife had landed. I didn't wipe the tears, or the floor. I just sat there, hands still smelling like garlic, heart still trying to remember if that was the first time he raised his voice, or just the loudest. The attic creaked above me. That room held everything I never threw away. Baby shoes, his first A+, a birthday card from when he still called me Nana in glitter pen. He used to love my roast, said it smelled like Sundays. I got up, slowly. My knees don't like fast decisions anymore. I walked over to the counter, took the check, and looked at it like a stranger. Then, I tore it, down the middle, then again, until it looked like confetti no one would celebrate. Not out of rage, out of relief. There's a grief that comes after the screaming. It's quieter and more permanent. I didn't call him, didn't text, just made a cup of tea, sat by the window, watched the wind knock over the flower pot on the porch. He'd made that for me in 3rd grade. A lopsided thing with blue handprints. I let it stay broken. Some things don't need fixing, just naming. This wasn't an argument. This was a burial. The check was shredded, the dinner untouched, and then, as I carried the cup to the sink, my phone buzzed. Bank alert, $28,000 tuition. Disbursement scheduled for 10 a.m. Monday. My breath caught. I'd forgotten. The check was torn, but the transfer, it was still scheduled. I stood at the sink for a long time, tea cooling in my hands. Steam faded. Resolve did not. He told me to get out of his life. Maybe it was time to start listening. Tomorrow is Monday. 10 a.m. is coming. And for once, I might just let him feel what it's like to be on his own. You can love someone enough to save them, or enough to stop saving them. The difference is one line on a form. A signature. Black ink, that's it. And yet, my hand trembled like I was signing a death certificate. The credit union smelled like printer toner and bad coffee. The kind of place where everything looked trustworthy but nothing felt warm. I wore my navy cardigan, the one with the stitched daisies on the pocket, and clutched my purse like it was holding my spine together. Kyle's disbursement was set to hit in 2 hours. I still had time. But I'd already lost too much. The manager's nameplate said Cheryl, but her eyes said, let's get this over with. She didn't ask about the tears in my voice. Didn't ask why my lipstick didn't match my blouse. She just pointed to the form. We can cancel the payment before noon, she said. After that, it's gone, just like him. I looked at the paper like it was daring me to finish what I'd started. Name of beneficiary, Kyle Thomas Bellamy still sounded like family. Didn't feel like it. Are you sure? Cheryl asked. I wasn't. Not as a grandmother, but as a woman who refused to fund her own erasure. Yes, I signed. The pen squeaked as it slid across the paper. One flick of the wrist, and the money stayed mine. Not because I needed it, but because I deserved to decide what love looked like, and silence wasn't it. Outside, the wind had picked up. It whipped my scarf sideways as I walked to the car. Didn't go home right away. I sat in the parking lot, watching birds peck at breadcrumbs on the curb. A man opened his trunk beside me, revealing a pink balloon and a wrapped box. Probably a birthday. Probably a child who still smiled at their mother. I looked away. When I finally walked in, the house greeted me with a heavy kind of quiet, the kind that settles into corners, the kind that forgets your name. I placed my purse on the kitchen chair, the one Kyle always used to drag too far out from the table, and made a cup of tea. Again, this time, I didn't sit by the window. I walked into the study. The will was in the drawer, the heavy one with the brass handle that stuck when it rained. I tugged harder than necessary. It opened with a groan, like even the wood wanted to protest what I was about to do. The document sat on top, clean, crisp, untouched, since last summer. To my grandson. Kyle, I leave my home, my savings, and all future distributions from the education fund. Double quotes. I traced the lines with my finger. So many promises written in permanent ink. He still had everything. Even after the scream, even after I walked out of the church where I once baptized him with baby shoes in my purse and hope in my heart, I closed the folder, didn't cross anything out, not yet. Instead, I looked at the desk drawer again. Inside was a photo. Kyle, age 6, missing his front teeth, arms around my waist. We were both laughing. That version of him loved bedtime stories and blueberry pancakes. That version of me believed in second chances. I sat with the photo in my lap. Not crying, not shaking, just still. A stillness that felt less like peace and more like a pause before a decision. The next morning, I'll return to the lawyer. Not to erase him, but maybe to make room for someone who still knows how to say thank you. The attic held everything I ever saved, but when I opened the door that morning, it didn't save me back. Just dust. Just boxes. Just the echo of a girl who once believed motherhood was enough. The wooden stairs creaked beneath my slippers, a sound older than Kyle. Every step up felt like stepping backward, back into memories that never apologized, back into years that didn't explain themselves. I pulled the cord. The light bulb flickered on, same one I'd meant to replace since 2019. It didn't flicker out. It just buzzed, like it had a secret. The boxes were labeled in faded Sharpie. Kyle, preschool Christmas to 004. Lisa's things. Lisa, my daughter, his mother, the only person who'd ever made me feel like love didn't require performance. Her handwriting was still there, slanted, sharp. One box had a note taped to it. Open, if you're ever lost. The irony made me let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. Then I opened the box. Inside, baby socks, a clay angel, an old flip phone, and a letter. It was sealed. She'd sealed it. Even dead, she had better timing than me. I sat cross-legged on the attic floor, the letter trembling in my hands like it was breathing. The envelope was warm now, from my fingers, or from the words trying to escape. I opened it. Her voice came back in ink. Mom, if you're reading this, it means something's broken, maybe between you and Kyle, maybe just in you. Either way, don't give up on him. Don't just love him. Raise him. You're his anchor. Don't let him drift. I read the letter twice, then 3 more times. Her voice was always calm, even in writing. Mine wasn't. Mine was splintering inside me, not loud, but dangerous. Had I let him drift? Or had I tied myself to a version of him that no longer existed? I closed the letter and clutched it to my chest. My sweater smelled like cinnamon and static. The attic, like mildew and old hope. I didn't cry. Not for Kyle, not for Lisa, but something did break. Soft and private, like the last thread on an unraveling sleeve. I stood up, walked back down, carefully, slowly, like the letter was made of fire. In the living room, I opened my phone, dialed the lawyer. His voice was brisk, impersonal. Like always. We can revise your estate by Wednesday, he said. But you'll need to name someone else, Margaret. Someone else. The words hit like a cracked rib. I didn't respond right away, just stared at my purse sitting in the corner, that same stupid floral one I'd had since Lisa's funeral. It used to carry snacks for Kyle, now it carried silence. I hung up. The clock on the wall ticked once, loud and hollow. I walked over to the dining table and placed Lisa's letter in the center. Beside it, I placed a pen. Not for notes, not for a grocery list, but for whatever name I'd write next. Not a replacement, but a reckoning. Because sometimes what you save isn't what saves you. Sometimes it's what sets you free. and I was finally ready to be free. I roasted the chicken, brushed it with rosemary and lemon like I used to. Set the table with 2 plates. His favorite blue-rimmed one across from mine. Poured iced tea into the glass he always filled with cola instead. Even folded the napkin in that stupid triangle he used to laugh at. I knew he wouldn't come. But grief likes rituals. The silence in the house didn't feel empty. It felt pointed, like the walls were waiting for me to finally admit it. He wasn't just gone, he'd left. And there's a difference. One hurts, the other bruises something deeper. I left the food on the table, steam curling from the roast, like it still believed we might share it. I walked over to the phone on the kitchen wall, the old landline still there, still wired, still waiting for calls that don't come anymore. I picked it up. Beep, beep, beep. Hey Kyle, dinner's ready, in case you're still mine. I hung up before my voice cracked. Didn't cry, didn't beg, just walked back to the table and ate in silence. 3 bites in, I stopped. Not because I was full, but because every chew felt like pretending. Pretending I still knew how to mother him. Pretending he hadn't torn through me like a house fire. I pushed the plate away. I looked at the chair across from me, still pulled slightly out, just like he always left it. I could have tucked it back in, but somehow, I wanted the room to remember the space he took and the silence he left behind. I opened my laptop, more to distract myself than anything. Scrolled Facebook with the kind of numbness that only grief teaches. Weddings, beach selfies, birthdays with dollar store balloons and faces that hadn't been screamed at. Then I saw it. A fundraiser. Kayla Simmons, senior, top of her class, no parental support, applying for state scholarships. Her smile was tight, the kind you learn after life teaches you to expect nothing. I clicked on her page. In the bio, trying to be the first in my family to go to college. Anything helps, even prayers. Underneath, a link. Nominate a student for private assistance. I stared at that sentence like it had spoken to me. Like it knew I was sitting in a kitchen full of cold food and one-sided forgiveness. Was this the moment? The fork in the road? What? More delusional, holding on, or letting go. Because love, I've learned, doesn't always look like second chances. Sometimes it looks like choosing someone who didn't choose to hurt you. I reached for my purse, the old floral one, pulled out my reading glasses and slid them on like armor. The kitchen light flickered once, then steadied. I clicked the link. The form popped up. Name of nominee. Reason for submission. How do you know them? How do I know her? I don't, but I know what she's fighting for. And I know what Kyle threw away. I started typing. Slowly, carefully, like every word might unbury something inside me. I don't know Kayla personally, but I know what it's like to pour yourself into someone and be left hollow. I'd like to give my support to someone still holding a bowl, not a sword. I hovered over the final button. Submit. The kitchen was still. The roast had cooled. The plate across from me still hadn't moved, but I had, and maybe that was enough. I clicked submit, not out of revenge, but redemption. And maybe, quietly, a kind of hope. The kind that doesn't beg for thank yous. The kind that plants something and walks away. As I closed the laptop, my phone buzzed. New message. From Kyle. You didn't answer. Did you get the alert? I stared at the screen for a long time, then turned it face down. Some dinners deserve silence. Some wars are loud. Others sit quietly in fluorescent rooms, waiting for you to press confirm. This one didn't smell like gunpowder. It smelled like laminate countertops and ballpoint ink. Still, I walked in like I'd brought a knife, and I had, just not the kind anyone could see. Tuesday morning. The bank manager led me to a small room tucked behind frosted glass. It had no windows, just a screen, a keyboard, and a chair that squeaked every time you shifted. I didn't shift. I'd already done enough of that this year. The scholarship coordinator, young, polite, efficient, smiled like this was just a transaction. It wasn't. It was an unmaking. And maybe, finally, a beginning. I want to transfer the full fund, I said. She raised her eyebrows. To Kayla Simmons. It's not a mistake. I handed over the paperwork. Kyle's name still sat on one. Coffee. I'd scribbled a line through it in thick, stubborn pen. The young woman scanned the documents and typed something into her system. I could hear each tap of the keys like a tiny verdict. We'll need confirmation from your private account, she said. I pulled the paper from my purse, the old floral one that never left my side, no matter how many dinners it had sat through. In silence, inside, everything was folded in threes. Will, Fund access, transfer request. Some women carry lipstick. I carried consequences. I signed the final line, then looked her in the eye. You don't know me, I said, voice low but sure, but someone should believe in her. She nodded once, a little slower than before, then clicked submit. It was done. The wire would clear by end of day. On the way out, I paused near the glass doors. The sunlight spilled through, painting my shoes in gold. Outside, the world carried on, loud, young, unbothered. I didn't walk to my car right away. I stood there and remembered something. Kyle's first day of kindergarten. He'd clung to my skirt and whispered, "Don't go." I hadn't, not for 19 years. Now he was somewhere pretending I didn't exist. And maybe he needed to, so he could grow, or justify. Either way, I stopped waiting to be thanked at home. I brewed tea I didn't want and opened the university portal on my laptop. An anonymous email, a one-line note. A donor has selected Kayla Simmons for full assistance. Please inform the student. I didn't sign it, didn't need to. Sometimes kindness works better when it's faceless. I stared at the screen for a long time. Was this justice or guilt wearing armor? Lisa's letter echoed in my mind. You're his anchor. Don't let him drift. But what if I wasn't the anchor anymore? What if I was the storm he needed to sail against? I shut the laptop, went to the kitchen, tried and failed to cut through the cooled roast. Eventually, I just dumped it in the trash. That dinner had never been meant to be eaten anyway. I stood there, hands on the sink, not crying, just listening. The faucet dripped once, twice, then my phone buzzed. University alert, disbursement, conflict, enrollment status flagged for Kyle Bellamy, immediate attention required. I blinked out, not because I was surprised, but because sometimes when a wire cuts clean, it still leaves a scar. The kitchen filled with a silence that wasn't empty, it was earned. I walked back to the table and tucked his chair in, all the way in this time. Then I picked up the floral purse. It felt lighter, like maybe I'd stopped carrying someone else's future. The alert stayed glowing on the phone. Screen. Kyle would call. He'd yell. He'd demand. But I had nothing left to untangle, and no more wires to reconnect. He didn't knock. He slammed. Like his rage had a key and didn't need permission. The door rattled. So did the picture frame on the entryway wall. The one with all three of us. Before grief rearranged our family like bad furniture. He stormed into the living room like I owed him an apology. Like silence had been too loud for his pride. I didn't rise, didn't flinch. I just sipped my tea and watched him unravel. You drained it. His voice cracked, half fury, half disbelief. My account says 0. You stole it. Stole that word, clanged through the room like a bell that had never belonged to him. I stopped something I started. I said, calmly, you lied. You weren't even enrolled. He stared, jaw clenched, color draining from his face. I saw it, not the guilt. The cornered child underneath the man trying to roar. I was going to fix it. Before or after you cashed in on a future you never built, I asked. He looked down. For the first time, like maybe the weight of it finally settled on him. Or maybe he just couldn't look me in the eyes anymore. You were supposed to believe in me. I did. The cup clinked gently as I set it on the table. For 19 years, even when you didn't believe in anything but your own excuses. His hands clenched at his sides, fists without answers. Then his voice softened, or maybe it just broke. Why her? I didn't pretend I didn't understand. I stood, walked to the mantel, and picked up a small ceramic figurine, the one Lisa made in high school pottery. A tiny anchor. She asked for help. You demanded it. I placed it in his hand. It trembled. I'm your grandson. And she's someone's daughter, I replied. One who didn't throw her chance away. He opened his mouth, closed it again. For a second, just one, I thought he might cry. But pride swallowed grief. As always, is this about punishment? No, I said. It's about protection. Of the woman I became when I stopped choosing people who treat love like a debit card. He turned away. And for a heartbeat, saw the boy I used to rock to sleep. The one who cried over broken crayons and nightmares. Now he cried for something else. Entitlement, dressed as betrayal. I have nothing now. His voice was a whisper. I didn't move closer. It's not true, I said. You have the chance to build something real. With your own name on it. He left. Didn't slam the door this time. It clicked shut like it had finally learned how to say goodbye. The room felt heavier once he was gone. but not in the way I feared. It felt cleared, like air after a long storm. I walked over to the table, picked up my phone. One new email. Subject: tuition transfer, confirmation body. Kayla Simmons has received her tuition credit. Classes begin next week. I exhaled, slow and full. The anchor was still on the table. I placed it beside my teacup, then opened the window. Outside, the wind shifted. Some things need to be cut loose so they remember how to steer. And some roots, they weren't meant to be replanted. They were meant to bloom elsewhere. Next week, someone will walk into a lecture hall holding her future, and maybe, for the first time in a long while, I single quotes LL sleep without checking the door. His keys were gone, but guilt still hung in the air, heavier than his coat ever did. The hall felt wider. His shoes weren't by the door. His cologne, that overpriced fog of denial, had faded from the couch cushions, but something colder had settled in its place, absence, with sharp corners. I turned off the porch light. It had stayed on 3 nights in a row, like an old woman's version of hope. Tonight, it stayed dark. Because sometimes, love isn't about leaving the light on, it's about knowing when to stop waiting in the hallway. I walked through the kitchen. His cup was still on the drying rack, the blue one with the chipped handle. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't put it back in the cupboard either. It could stay there, unclaimed. The house creaked like it was remembering something, or forgetting out loud. I sat at the dining table and opened my journal. The leather spine cracked like it hadn't been touched in months, because it hadn't. First line: when love ends, what remains? I didn't have an answer, just questions that circled each other like dogs guarding a bone. I poured a second cup of tea, pushed it across the table like he still might walk in. Old reflexes die slower than old dreams. Then the voicemail buzzed. A new message. I pressed play. Hi, this is Kayla Simmons. I hope this is okay. The scholarship lady said someone nominated me, and I just wanted to say thank you. You gave me a chance. I won't waste it. Her voice was nervous, grateful, unpolished, like she'd never been handed anything clean. I listened twice, the second time with my eyes closed. It didn't sound like a stranger. It sounded like family, like a voice trying to build a home inside itself. I leaned back in the chair, the same one I rocked Kyle in when he had chickenpox, when all he wanted was juice and bedtime stories. Now all he wanted was money and someone to blame. And I had run out of both. The clock ticked too loud, the walls felt too still. So I wrote, love is not owed, it's offered. But when the hand you reach out gets bitten, sometimes you stop reaching, not out of cruelty, but out of wisdom. I was about to close the journal when something caught my eye on the couch. A white envelope, unsealed, unsmoothed, my name in his handwriting, final 80 words. I didn't touch it, not yet. I just stared. Because some letters don't open doors, they creak them wider. They don't ask for forgiveness. They dare you to feel again. The tea had gone cold beside me, but something else had warmed in the room. Maybe not trust, maybe not even reconciliation, but breath, the kind you take before the plunge, or after the storm. I reached for the envelope, because even when the house is empty, sometimes the heaviest thing left behind is the unopened truth. It wasn't a letter, it was a white flag, folded in guilt, sealed in something softer than pride, but harder than apology. And still my hands shook as I opened it, not from rage, from recognition. Because no matter how old they get, you still remember the weight of your child's first "I'm sorry," even when it's written by a man in grown-up shame. The paper was wrinkled like he'd rewritten it too many times. There was a coffee ring in the corner, and a smudge near the top where the ink had bled. Right over my name. Grandma. That word alone cracked something in me. He hadn't called me that in months. Not since the scream. Not since the dinner that ended us. I didn't know how to come back from that scream. I thought if I avoided the sound of it long enough, maybe it would fade, but it didn't. It followed me. I heard it every time I tried to sleep. Every time I lied to someone about who I was. I paused, stared at the stove, remembered the night I almost burned the roast because I was crying too hard to hear the timer. I wasn't enrolled, not really. I told you, I was waiting on forms. Truth is, I never sent them. I didn't want to fail, so I never tried. And I thought I could live off the parts of me you'd saved. There it was, the twist of the knife, not because he admitted it, but because it meant I'd taught him silence could be currency. You didn't steal from me. You stopped me from stealing from you, and maybe from myself too. I don't expect forgiveness. I just didn't want you to find an empty house and wonder if you were the one who abandoned it. I swallowed hard, tea gone cold, room gone still, heart ... open just enough to let the wind back in. He didn't ask to come back, didn't beg, didn't explain away the choices like they were symptoms. He just ... confessed, like he finally understood that pain doesn't excuse damage, it only traces its path. I set the letter down beside the anchor Lisa had made, their hands, both of them, still shaping the weight I carried. I stood, not rushed, not shaky, just decided. Then, I picked up my phone, opened the browser, and found the contact listed on Kayla's fundraiser page. Hi, this is Margaret Bellamy. I'd like to speak to Kayla's counselor about next semester's tuition. Privately, I didn't leave a callback number, but I left my name, because some gifts don't come with receipts, they come with responsibility. I walked into the hallway. The light was soft, that early morning gray that makes everything look a little more honest. I stood where his coat used to hang, where his keys used to jingle, where the boy version of him used to tie his shoes and ask me if monsters were real. They were, but not under his bed, in his excuses. And mine. I picked up the journal again. New page. Love without boundaries becomes sacrifice. Love with truth becomes legacy. And then, finally, I did something I hadn't done since Lisa died. I opened the window without checking the weather. The breeze didn't ask permission, it just entered. Final 80 words. I picked up my phone, typed slowly, deliberately, like I was drawing a map out of the wreckage too. Kyle, tomorrow, 10 a.m. we talk. You bring your truth, I'll bring mine. I didn't wait for a reply, just looked out the window. A leaf fluttered past, golden, free, because sometimes healing doesn't begin in apology, it begins in invitation. One quiet line, written after the storm, carried by a woman who'd finally stopped making her love invisible. The plates clinked, the words didn't. He stirred his coffee like it had wronged him. I stirred mine like I was keeping my hands from saying something they shouldn't. We both ate guilt that morning, only his came with sugar. We met at a little cafe 2 blocks from the library. Eggshell walls, creaky floors, the kind of place where conversations go to hide or heal. He sat first, didn't pull out my chair, but I didn't expect him to. Thanks for coming, he said. Like it was a favor. Like I hadn't spent 19 years showing up. I nodded once, waited through the waitress dropping off our plates, through the clatter of forks, through the steam rising off overcooked eggs. Then finally, I didn't mean what I said that day. I looked up, met his eyes, saw the quiver he was trying to blink away. You said it like you rehearsed it. His face twitched, not a wince, a tell. He pushed his food around with the edge of his toast. I sipped coffee I couldn't taste, watched the way his fingers fidgeted on the tablecloth. It wasn't about the money, he said, softly. That's the problem, I replied, because if it were, it'd be easier to forgive. He looked away, out the window, at a world that hadn't punished him yet. There was a pause long enough for the waitress to refill both our cups. She didn't ask if we wanted more. She just sensed it, that the silence needed something to hide behind. Then he dropped it. I got a scholarship, a real one, merit-based. He reached into his coat, pulled out a folded letter, placed it next to the napkin dispenser, didn't slide it over, just left it there, like a peace offering with fine print. They need a signature from my guardian. Since I'm technically still under your financial custody from the original trust. His voice trailed off. I stared at the letter, didn't touch it, didn't need to yet. So now I'm a guardian again. He nodded once, like a kid asking the teacher if he could use the bathroom, not because he had to, but because asking was the rule. I looked at his face, really looked. There was a grown man there, but he wore boyhood like a second skin, torn in places, too tight in others. I'll think about it, I said. He blinked, started to speak. I'll think about it, I repeated, firmer, with conditions. His lips parted, then closed. He knew better than to ask what they were. He knew I wouldn't tell him yet. I folded my napkin, laid it on the edge of the plate, straightened it with 2 fingers the way I used to when he was small and wouldn't eat unless everything felt just right. He stared at it, like maybe that napkin was the real signal, that the tide had shifted, and he didn't control the waves anymore. You're not my project, Kyle, I said. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to make sure the version of you who shows up to this world is real, not rehearsed. He nodded, didn't smile, didn't cry, but something loosened in his shoulders barely. We left the cafe without hugging, without promises, without pretending this breakfast solved anything. But outside, as we stood near the curb, he did something he hadn't done in years. He opened the car door for me, didn't say why, didn't say goodbye, just waited until I was in, then walked away without looking back. Final 80 words. The scholarship letter sat in my purse, folded next to my checkbook, and a peppermint from the cafe. I didn't sign it. Not yet. At home, I placed it beside the anchor on the mantel. Let them both sit there, one built from clay, one from hope. Because maybe love isn't giving someone what they ask for. It's asking them who they plan to become, and waiting for an answer that sounds like growth. Tomorrow, we'll see if he's ready to speak it. He didn't need forgiveness. He needed boundaries, and for once, I gave them, not in anger, not in revenge, but in the quiet voice women use when they're finally done rescuing men from their own mess. We sat on a park bench just outside the cafe, same cracked wood, same chipping green paint. The wind had teeth that morning, but neither of us moved. Maybe we were both tired of running. Kyle fidgeted with the zipper on his jacket like it had secrets. I watched birds peck breadcrumbs off the pavement. They never questioned what belonged to them. They just took what they needed and left the rest. He cleared his throat. They won't finalize the award until I submit the signed verification, he said, not meeting my eyes. I nodded. Slowly. I read the letter. I said. His posture stiffened, not like a soldier, but like a boy afraid of detention. It's legit. I worked for it. The essay was about failure and rebuilding trust. He laughed once. Dry. Ironic, huh? I didn't laugh. Just reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope I'd packed before leaving the house. Not his letter. Mine. I didn't come here to hear your pitch, I said. I came here to give you terms. He blinked, looked at the envelope like it might bite. Inside is my signature, and a contract. His eyebrows lifted. A contract. You want adult responsibilities, then earn adult trust. With accountability, not apologies. His mouth opened, but I raised my hand before he could speak. 3 conditions, I said. First, monthly check-ins, not texts. In person, he nodded, cautious. Second, part-time job, any job. I don't care if it's bagging groceries or walking dogs. You put in your own skin. He looked down at his shoes, said nothing. Third, therapy. Real, consistent, not for credit therapy. You don't get to carry wounds into rooms you haven't swept clean. The wind picked up. Leaves scraped across the sidewalk like tiny verdicts. Still, he didn't run. Can you do that? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Then I think I have too. I looked at him then, really looked, at the stubble he hadn't bothered to shave, at the hands that had once handed me Mother's Day cards with smudged marker hearts, at the eyes that now carried shadows deeper than the last few years deserved. And I saw it, not penance, but a flicker of want, not for money, but for worth. Why now? I asked. Not cold, just tired. Of being the only one who looked backward and forward at the same time. He was quiet for a long moment. Then finally said, because for the first time, I want a future I built, not one you left open for me. I didn't cry, didn't soften. But something in me reassembled like furniture, moved back into a room after a long renovation. I handed him the envelope. He took it like it was heavier than paper. Because it was the weight of consequence, and the possibility of repair. We sat there a while longer, no more talking, just the sound of traffic and wind and 2 people trying to find a bridge between them that didn't feel like a leash. Final 80 words, at home. I placed my floral purse on the table beside the ceramic anchor. It didn't feel heavy to date, just necessary. The park bench was empty now, but not abandoned. Marked, maybe, by the memory of a boundary drawn in love, because sometimes trust doesn't mean starting over. It means starting differently, with guardrails, with grit, with truth stitched into the seams. Thought the envelope was gone, but the power in handing it over, that stayed. Before I handed him a pen, I made him hand me the truth. Not the kind written on resumes, not the version you tell your pastor or your parole officer, but the one you say with your whole chest, even if it trembles. We sat on my porch just before dusk. The wind was mean, but the sky was soft. One of those evenings where the light lies, makes everything look golden. even if it's broken. Kaya sat in the wicker chair across from me. It creaked every time he shifted. Good, let it groan. Some seats aren't supposed to be comfortable. I'll sign it, I said, holding the document in my lap. But not until you do something first. His brows furrowed. Say it. He blinked. Say what? What you did. Say it aloud. Not just to me, to them. I nodded toward his phone on the porch railing. The same way you built the lie. He stared at the phone like it had teeth. I already wrote the apology, and you mailed it in private. I cut him off gently, but firm. This wasn't a private wound, Kyle. He swallowed, looked down at his hands. They'll tear me apart. Then maybe you'll finally stop pretending you're whole, I replied. We sat there in silence for a full minute, then another. Long enough for the porch light to flicker on, even though I hadn't touched the switch. Motion sensor, triggered, by reckoning. He picked up his phone, opened the camera, pressed record. His voice was thin at first, like he was borrowing it. Then something shifted. My name is Kyle Bellamy, and I lied. I stole tuition money that wasn't mine. I manipulated trust and hid behind the generosity of someone who raised me. He paused, eyes darted toward mine. I didn't move, didn't save him. I wasn't enrolled. I forged documents. I told myself I'd fix it before anyone found out, but I didn't, because I didn't want to try. I wanted it easy, and I used my grandma to get it. His throat clicked as he swallowed. His eyes glistened. But he didn't stop. I'm not asking anyone to forgive me. I just want to say it out loud. Because silence doesn't heal, it hides. He hit stop. The wind settled. Just for a moment. Like the porch itself needed to exhale. He didn't look at me, just stared at the screen like it might erase him. Now post it, I said. He hesitated. His thumb hovered, and then, a tap, gone. Out into the world. No takebacks, no edits, no soft focus. He looked like he might throw up, or cry, or both. Instead, he leaned back in the chair and said nothing. I stood, walked inside, came back with the envelope, placed it on the small wooden table between us. We do this on my terms, I said. He nodded once. Didn't reach for it. Not yet. The porch light caught his face just right, and for the first time in months, he didn't look like someone I needed to save. He looked like someone trying to stand. His phone buzzed. Loud in the quiet. He flipped it over. Notification. Local journalist requests interview video confession. Final 80 words. I didn't tell him what to say. Didn't tell him not to do it. Just watched as his past asked to be quoted. He held the phone like it burned, but he didn't put it down. Inside, I placed the floral purse back on its hook. Didn't feel like armor anymore. Just fabric. Because when you stop carrying someone's shame, you start walking lighter. And sometimes, the real signature isn't ink. It's the moment someone chooses truth while the world is still watching. We sat side by side scrolling comments. She cried. I didn't. Not because I was stronger, but because I'd already bled out that wound. Now I was just watching it scar. The video had gone live 16 hours ago. One shaky confession. 3 minutes. A porch light in the background and a boy finally learning how to burn bridges he never earned. I opened my laptop in the home office. The one with Lisa's old corkboard still hanging crooked above the desk. Kyle pulled up a chair without asking. That alone was new. The first few comments were cautious, neutral, curious. Then came the spit. Typical trust fund brat. Crocodile tears. Where was this energy when he was cashing fake checks? Kyle leaned back, arms crossed. His mouth twisted like he was chewing something bitter he couldn't spit out. Some people hate me, he muttered. I didn't look at him, just kept scrolling. You'll be fine, I said. I've been hated longer. He chuckled, not happy, just startled. Like shame didn't know I had armor of my own. Generational, reinforced, zippered up under my ribcage. I thought this would help, he said. It did. For who? For whoever you become next. We kept reading. Buried in the bile were a few brave flowers. It takes guts to own it like that. His grandma's the real one here. Maybe there's hope for him. He blinked. I didn't say anything. Hope wasn't the prize. It was the permission slip. We sat in silence. Just the hum of the screen and the soft tick of the wall clock. Kyle's foot tapped. I recognized the rhythm. Same one from when he used to practice spelling words at the table. Nervous energy, looking for an exit. Then his inbox pinged. He leaned forward, read it, then turned the screen toward me. Dear Mr. Bellamy, we watched your video. We'd like to invite you to speak to our senior ethics seminar at Hillmark College. Also, your grandmother has been nominated as an honoree for our Women of Influence Week. I read it twice, not because I couldn't believe it, but because I could. And that scared me more. What's Hillmark? He asked. School, I said, then closed the laptop gently, like I was tucking something in for the night. Kyle was quiet, too quiet. You don't have to go, he offered. I know. I stood, walked over to the side table, and picked up the ceramic anchor, felt its weight again. You wanted visibility, I said. This is what it looks like. All eyes, no net, he nodded. Not the fake kind. The kind men make when they're ready to listen, not defend. Do I have to say yes? He asked. No, I replied. But if you say no, let it be for truth, not fear. He sat back in the chair, arms resting in his lap now, like they'd given up shielding anything. That night, after he left, I brewed chamomile, opened the envelope with the college seal. Inside was a cream-colored card, raised lettering, gold edges. Honoree, Margaret Davis. They used my maiden name. I didn't cry, but I did sit there for a long time, letting the steam rise around my face like a quiet crown. I placed the card on the mantel, next to the anchor, next to the envelope. I no longer needed to check, because I wasn't just his guardian anymore. I was mine. The world had watched him unravel. Now, it would watch him rebuild. But me, I wasn't the background, not anymore. Sometimes, the loudest legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's the version of ourselves we stop hiding, even when the light hits crooked. Even when we think no one's clapping. She called me her second mother. I called her my redemption, not aloud, just in the way I reached for her hand when she walked past my row, and didn't let go. The college auditorium smelled like fresh paint and student nerves. Kayla's campus, Hillmark. I'd seen photos online, dorms the color of lemonade, bulletin boards full of protest flyers and gratitude notes. But today, the walls held applause. I wore navy, not black, not beige, something that said dignified, not buried. The floral purse rested on my lap like it had every answer I'd ever needed, and most of the ones I didn't. Single quotes. Kyle sat beside me, clean shave, pressed shirt, a look I hadn't seen on him since prom, the one he left early to get drunk behind the gym. But today he stayed, didn't fidget, didn't check his phone, just sat upright like someone finally earning his own last name. The host tapped the mic. Today we honor Margaret Davis, he said, mispronouncing it slightly, but I didn't correct him. I'd spent too many years correcting people who never planned to remember me. Let him stumble. I wasn't here to be smooth. I was here to be real. Then Kayla took the stage, hair pulled back, maroon dress, shoes a little too big, like she was growing into this moment before our eyes. When I first met Margaret, she began, voice clear but trembling. I was told she ran a small scholarship fund. Quiet, private, just for one. A ripple of interest moved through the room. Even Kyle leaned in. But this fund didn't just change my life, she continued. It rewrote it. I didn't expect the tears then. Not from her. And not the kind that made a scene. Just the ones that glisten and make your whole face look like it remembers something it hasn't said yet. She called me brave when I didn't even feel visible, Kayla said. And when my brother got sick last year, she sent grocery cards, not flowers, because she knew food feeds shame faster than sympathy ever could. I blinked. Once, then again, because that part, I hadn't told anyone about that part, didn't ask me for straight A's, just honest effort. And for the first time in my life, I wanted to work hard, not to escape something, but to become someone. The audience applauded, but I didn't hear it. I heard Lisa's laugh, the way she used to tease me for writing grocery lists on napkins and leaving them tucked in my bra like scripture. Kayla looked right at me then. In every way that matters, she mothered me. And I know I'm not the only one. I stood, because my knees wouldn't hold the weight of sitting through that much grace. We hugged at center stage, tight, silent, that kind of silence where you feel every unspoken thank you pressed into your shoulder. Back in our row, Kyle leaned close. I want to donate to her brother, he whispered. I turned, stunned. What? I've been working, he said. Not much, just side gigs. But I've saved a little. Enough for books, maybe, bus fare, something. It wasn't the size of the gesture. It was the source. A few months ago, He couldn't even carry a conversation without turning it into an escape plan. I smiled. Not big, but wide enough for history to feel it. Later, I'd place Kayla's thank you card inside my floral purse, next to the old envelope. Different hands, same heart. Because maybe I didn't lose a daughter. Maybe I multiplied her. Kyle watched me like he was waiting for permission to feel proud. I didn't give it. Didn't need to. The light hit the stage floor just right. No shadows, just clarity. Because legacy isn't who we raise, it's who we choose again. After the fall, after the fraud, after the fear. He didn't bring apologies. He brought soup. That was louder. Louder than the silence that used to settle between us like fog. Louder than the sorry he'd worn thin. This time, he brought broth and intent. I heard him knock, not ring the bell, knock, like he belonged, but wasn't assuming. It was Sunday. The kitchen smelled like onion skin and steam. And for once, I didn't brace myself to open the door. He held up a container with both hands, like an offering. Mismatched Tupperware, red lid, cracked corner. Chicken and rice, he said. Thought you might be tired of carrying everyone else's weight. I almost laughed. Almost, but instead, I stepped back, let him in, and watched as he set it down like it mattered. The house didn't stiffen the way it used to when he walked in. It exhaled. Or maybe I did. He didn't sit right away, just lingered by the counter. Fingers trailing the edge of the recipe binder I hadn't opened in months. I used low sodium, he added, trying not to smile. That's supposed to impress me, I asked. Honestly, I let him pour the bowls. I didn't test it first. Didn't ask what was in it. That was the test. We sat at the kitchen table, the one with the chip in the middle, from when Lisa dropped her science project. Neither of us brought her up. But the table remembered. The soup was warm, simple, honest, like it had nothing to prove. He broke the silence first. I've been thinking, he said, spoon scraping quietly. That always ends well, I replied. He smiled, then winced, like he knew he deserved that one. I want to help rebuild the fund, he said. I looked up. He didn't flinch. Not just donate, like, run it with you, for real. Grow it, make it something permanent. I tilted my head, let the weight of his offer settle between the salt shaker and the folded napkin. Why? I asked. He didn't blink. Because redemption's louder when it echoes. I didn't answer, just stood, walked to the drawer by the fridge, pulled out a folder, navy blue, gold clip, the new paperwork, blank, untouched, waiting. I placed it between us like a deal and a dare. We filled it out in silence, name, contact, mission statement. When he got to the role section, he paused. Then wrote, Operations and Outreach. I didn't correct him. Didn't say that's ambitious. Didn't remind him of last year's headlines. I just watched his hand move like he believed it. The wind tapped the window, soft like an old friend. Outside, dusk stretched its arms across the yard. Inside, we'd just agreed to build something that might outlive us. He washed the bowls without being asked, dried them too, stacked them where they belonged. Didn't pretend he didn't know. As he grabbed his coat, his phone buzzed. He looked down, smiled. What is it? I asked. He turned the screen toward me. A text from Kayla. Saturday, don't be late. Your name's on the banner. After he left, I tucked the signed forms beside the floral purse. That purse had carried grief, letters, and grocery cards. Now it carried beginnings. I poured the leftover soup into a new container, labeled it with the date, because healing deserves a timestamp. Legacy isn't carved in stone. It's simmered, served, and sometimes reheated. And trust, maybe it can't be regrown, but it can be replanted. With care, with work, and sometimes, with soup. Money didn't raise him, it hid him. From consequences, from character, from himself. But care, real, inconveniently constant care, might have been the only thing that saved us both. And today, it finally got a microphone. The ceremony hall was sunlit and humming, not polished like a gala, just honest. Streamers taped unevenly, chairs borrowed from 3 departments, and a banner that read, Legacy in Action. No spotlight, just daylight. Kayla sat in the front row, flanked by her RA and her little brother. He clutched a laminated name badge that hung down to his knees. I could tell he wasn't used to being invited into rooms like this. Neither was I. Kyle stood backstage with me, nervous energy in full bloom. He kept smoothing his shirt like wrinkles could outrun guilt. But I wasn't watching his hands. I was watching his eyes, and they weren't darting. They were anchored. The student host called my name. No mispronunciation this time, just Margaret Davis. Like I'd always been meant for syllables that didn't shrink. I walked to the podium, slowly, deliberately, not like a woman arriving, but one returning. I didn't have a speech in my hands. I didn't need one. This fund, I began, didn't erase me. It remembered me. A pause. The kind that makes a room lean forward, not because they expect wisdom, but because they finally believe you have it. My name is on a few things now, I said, but I spent years being a background character in my own story. Grandma, widow, volunteer. People like to praise what we survive, but they never ask what it cost us to survive it. A few heads nodded. The kind of nods that come from people who've folded laundry while crying in silence, who've answered phones on the third ring just to sound composed. I saw them. I started this fund with a grocery receipt and a prayer. I thought I was giving someone else a future. Turns out, I was building my own. A laugh small, but it rippled. Even Kayla's brother smiled. I didn't get it right the first time. Or the second. But grace, I said, isn't a one-time coupon. It's something you renew if you've got the nerve to ask again. I looked toward Kyle. He nodded once, didn't cry, didn't hide, just stood there like a man learning how to stay. I used to think legacy was something you leave behind, I said, but maybe it's who you choose to stand beside, again and again, even after the trust gets cracked like porcelain. I stepped back. The applause wasn't thunderous. It was respectful, soft, like clapping for something sacred, like praying out loud with your hands. After the ceremony, a girl approached me, corduroy skirt, ink-stained fingers, said she'd read the new blog post we launched that morning. The way you write, she said, it feels like home I haven't lived in yet. And I almost cried, because I had no idea people still read anything slowly. Kyle helped pack the donation table, signed a few name tags for volunteers. At one point, someone asked him how he knew me. He paused, then said, she raised me, twice. On the drive home, we didn't talk much, just let the air between us settle. Like soup that finally found its simmer. At home, I placed the ceremony program on the mantel, tucked it beside the purse. Same place I'd once hidden regret, now holding restoration. As night fell, I lit the old cinnamon candle, the one Lisa bought on clearance. It burned slow, but it burned. I whispered to the quiet kitchen, legacy earned, not owed, not a proclamation, not a boast, just a receipt for everything care cost me, and still returned, because healing doesn't clap when it arrives. It pulls up a chair, passes the ladle, and waits, patient, unshaken, ready to serve what survived.